Thank you. This is such a diverse pool of experience here. We have people dedicated to innovation, to tech innovation, and with a lot of experience in working with women in the Global South. And maybe, Lisa, I would start with you. We've heard from Abimbola that it's really smart economics to invest in women. I would be curious to learn about your experience at the Gate Foundation. Does this does evidence really show this? And why is it that women are said to hold the key to lift their families and communities out of poverty? What is your impression on that?
Well, it's really wonderful to be here again, and the Gates Foundation is co-funding the WE program with Amibola in Nigeria, and so I think that shows we really believe in this approach, especially the ecosystem approach of addressing the core constraints that women face and in getting productive assets together, but also dealing with the health of their families. So we're really excited to see where that program goes. From our perspective, the Women's Economic Empowerment team at the Gates Foundation is focused on 5 major areas to advance women. So the first is access to capital, then access to markets, access to digital technology and innovation, access to childcare and family planning, and then the use of digital data to bring it all together in an ecosystem play and the bundling of all of that to really change women's lives. So in terms of the impact that you're questioning, you're asking about, our new strategy is just almost 2 years old, so we're just starting to pull in impact evidence. But what we are seeing is that combinations of these types of interventions seem to be advancing women's income and their profits in their businesses, on an average from 20 to 80%. So we're just starting to really kind of understand, not only the importance of driving the women as social entrepreneurs themselves, but what are the impacts of these companies on women on the other side. So I'll say that in experiments or in investments where we're working with social enterprise to incorporate women's economic empowerment and childcare interventions, we're seeing profits increase for the what do they call the mamapreneur, and also for the woman on the other side who's been able to re-enter the workforce of anywhere from 30 to 45% per year. So, I think that that's something that's extremely important for us to look at, is even in rural areas, the importance of high quality but affordable childcare. Another area that's really been surprising us in terms of impact for women as entrepreneurs and women on the other side is access to mentorship. Over and over, we're seeing impact studies that show direct income gains from access to women-led mentorship networks. So I think that this probably Amibola would have some direct experience in this. There's kind of we've seen mentorship programs where women have access to male mentors that do not have any impact. What you usually find is that there are a lot of social norms involved that just allow a woman to essentially kind of step back and not really share everything that she needs to share in order to get benefit from that mentorship environment. We're also seeing from credit a really interesting range of impact from 0 and even -0 all the way to 80% increase in income for women. And I think that this really speaks to how much we need to be understanding, to Amibola's point about this massive financing gap. Not all credit is the same, and really being able to develop the types of credit products that do advance women, that don't lead to over-indebtedness. But at the same time, let's just be honest that as the statistics point out, only 2% of the demand for credit among women entrepreneurs, and that includes social entrepreneurs, is met. There are other types of interventions like ultra-poor graduation programs that are showing 20 to 50% increase in income for women over time, sustained up to 5-10 years after programming. And then we're also seeing, interestingly, upskilling plus access to markets, even Facebook markets, WhatsApp markets, other types of markets, increasing women's profitability up to 68%. So, I think that we are seeing the types of interventions that can change women's lives on the other side. And then from our perspective, we're also seeing something that Amibola pointed to as well, is the incredible potential of women-owned enterprises to generate jobs. So in a recent survey that we just did, we saw that women's nano, micro, and small enterprises in Africa generate more jobs than all other enterprises, medium, large enterprises, female and male-led. They generate more jobs than all of the rest of those sectors in sub-Saharan Africa. The issue is those jobs are highly volatile, and most of them are in the informal sector. So I think the combination, that pyramid that you showed of of policy and financing and those layers, we do have a real potential to be working with women as entrepreneurs, both as social entrepreneurs and normal entrepreneurs, millions and millions of women as entrepreneurs in Africa, to be a real agent of change. But I still think that those core pillars that we're talking about in the WE strategy and in our joint program with the Bayer Foundation of addressing health constraints, childcare constraints, capital constraints, access to information and networks. These are the kinds of building blocks that we have to get into place in order to really drive women's enterprise as a change agent for Africa. And we need to be serious about the constraints women face in terms of mobility and in terms of safety and security. A lot of what we're seeing is that women will only engage so far if they believe there could be potential for gender-based violence. It's a very serious issue that women face, and it's something I think that the WE program in Nigeria has been quite thoughtful about. Is how do you bring the ecosystem of actors to make women as economic agents safe in that space, in a state like Kaduna, which is high risk. So I think this can be done. We're seeing the evidence of the impact start to come through, and looking forward to watching this joint program with the Bayer Foundation unfold.
Great. I think it's super interesting to hear your perspective from a funder perspective. And we speak about so many challenges that women have to face and still being so successful, and the numbers show that. So Chitkala, I'm thinking here, maybe some of the challenges faced by women are the same despite the career path that they choose, right? So you're a corporate female leader, and I'm sure you've also faced a bit of this tension between the professional and the personal roles that women are still expected to have. So maybe you want to share a bit how that journey has been for you, or how do you see it on the corporate side, and is there any learning or any insights to transfer to the entrepreneurship path?
Yeah, happy to do so. First of all, I'm very happy to be here in the midst of such wonderful leaders who are having such a great impact. So congratulations to the Bayer Foundation team for putting together such a wonderful event, and as I said, really glad to be here. I started my professional journey, my career, 25 years ago, and I started as a management consultant at the Boston Consulting Group, and then I moved to a large pharmaceutical company. I was there for 15 years, and then I came to Bayer 7 years ago. And I look at this as 3 different phases of my life as well. When I started with my first job, I was a single woman, and then I transitioned to starting a family, and then becoming a mother. And I have gone through these different stages where my professional life was also evolving as my personal life was evolving. And what I would say is my interest was always in addressing disparities, addressing access gaps. I grew up in India, and I came to the US almost 30 years ago to do my PhD. And I stayed in the US, but I have always kept in touch with what was happening back with my family, back in the country of my birth. And since I was in a field that was involved in drug development and drug registration, I saw that drugs were being developed in certain parts of the world and registered in certain parts of the world. And then there was this access gap in other parts of the world. So my interest, as I said, was always in addressing healthcare disparities. I was able to do that through my work. And as my professional career evolved and my personal life was also evolving, also bringing into the picture my parents, my aging parents, caring for my young daughter, that focus on healthcare really became even more intense. And that's why I relate very much to what Monica said about making sure that everybody who needs access to health is able to do it. And that's what I've been doing, I would say, in the last 5 years, even more intensely in addressing those access gaps. So how has that addressed this professional personal balance that you asked me about? I think family support is key. And I've always felt that I'm the one driving my decision to have a career. I was never forced to have a career or forced to not have a career. And I think that is such a big support. And it is not universal. I feel very fortunate to have that. And how can that be made possible in a culturally sensitive manner with the different communities that we work with? That is one of the things that I like to focus on, because in certain communities, it is almost seen as a problem if the woman has to go out and work. What is it that the family is not providing that she has to go out and work? So that's one thing where, how do we get the family engaged in it and feel proud about the woman of the family becoming an entrepreneur? And what is it for the family to contribute to that? That's also an important part of the awareness that needs to be created. And I know there are a lot of activities that are being done. I think Lisa highlighted a number of those activities that are happening. So for me, that social aspect is very important. And then the other part is the caregiver part, whether it's caring for a child or caring for aging parents. There is that feeling where we have to be available for our families. If you're working, especially in healthcare disparities, you have to take care of your family and make sure that they don't face the gap because you're missing in action and you're at work. So how do you get people, especially women entrepreneurs, that kind of support where either the partner or the family or their friends community, other mothers or other female entrepreneurs, talking about it and creating their own self-formed networks, that will also help a lot. So to me, looking at the personal and the professional journey, I find mentorship to be very important, and especially networks of peers, mentors, as well as just members of your community, and looking at other women as really your partners and creating win-win solutions. I think gone are the days where you look at one another as competition. Let that be something of the past, and let us really get into the future where we genuinely hold hands, and you see when a woman is successful, you take pride in her success, because when a woman leader is successful, I think she is really paving the way for other women, and she's also standing on the shoulders of other women before her, because of whom she's able to be in that position. And I think this also needs to be looked at from a generational perspective, where I think many of us have mothers who were in a different situation, and we are in a vastly different situation right now, and we still have many challenges, but hopefully the challenges that we are working through will help the next generation and then forward. So I think there is an intergenerational aspect to the work that all of us here are doing. And it may not be a big bang win right away, but I think we all realize that the cause is really worth the effort. And we have a number of challenges, but we are working on it as diligently as possible. We do need more support and more attention being given to this topic, but I do see that the future is bright. And if we continue to focus the way we are beginning to focus more on women-led ventures, and to make that sort of a pride of the community, that the women are being supported across different generations. So that's how I would share my journey and what I'm looking forward to.
Thank you, Shitkala. I think that resonates quite well with yesterday we met the winners of the Women Empowerment Award from this year, and this mutual support, and you've spoken about this network, known competition, but rather mutually supporting each other, including with those intrinsic challenges that maybe are neglected sometimes, right? Because we're talking about financial gap and we're talking about topics that are certainly relevant, but we should not forget those very sensitive topics related to women being outside of the house. And Lakshmi, I think at the Grameen Foundation, having this, very straightforward focus on women, I'm sure you have experienced this tension, this conflict, and you've come up with some initiatives to help to mitigate that. Maybe you can share a bit of that with us.
Thank you so much. It's a real pleasure to be here. Super wonderful. I feel so humbled to be on a panel with such esteemed panelists and moderator. Thank you so much. At Grameen Foundation, we invest in the power of women and aim to increase incomes, entrepreneurship opportunities, and increase agency and resilience building. And so really shifting barriers and trying to dismantle them for women, women entrepreneurs, women smallholder farmers, and young women, as all of them are within the ecosystem. So we're really trying to do this so that women are able to show up with their full power. They're able to come to the table with that full power. And we take a holistic ecosystems approach, working with a wide variety of ecosystem actors. But just taking a page from what my other panelists have been speaking about, I kind of want to drill down a little bit into what we consider to be intra-household dialogues. And this idea that there, of course, are changes that need to take place outside of the household sphere. But we also think, taking an ecosystems approach, that we need to look into the household and the dynamics within the household and how we could shift that. We know that there are rooted social and gender norms, and that there are deep-rooted biases. But how do we get people to explore power and power dynamics is really what we aim to do with the intra-household dialogue approach. And kind of what comes from that is this understanding between husband and wife about the various ways in which a woman is contributing to household income, which begins to shift the perspective of male counterparts quite significantly. And people always ask, well, what are those real indicators of change? It's maybe not enough to just shift for perspectives, but are there real actions that are coming out from that? And what we see are that through this dialogue approach and through the use of our larger kind of gender power tools is that we are beginning to generate male champions. We know that men, members of households and communities, are really becoming allies of women entrepreneurs and able to kind of boost up women with the triple burden that they sometimes face in rural economies, right? The agricultural burden, the child rearing burden, the household burden. And so we see men actually taking a stance and saying, I'm going to be able to support my wife as she goes out, perhaps, and works in her input shop, and support her with the child rearing or household duties during that time that she's away. We also see that, as income entrepreneurship opportunities increase for women in rural communities, we all know the statistics that there are increased rates of gender-based violence occurrences. And so the cultivation of male champions in these communities really decreases those rates quite significantly. We see women opening up more bank accounts, men depositing into those accounts as interested parties in contributing to a woman's income and income generating activities. And we see more household decision making also being handled by women. One or two more things to touch upon is this idea that as we support a household to go through this change, we're also supporting ecosystem players to recognize that this change is taking place and try and determine what they can do to support this change taking place in a household as well. So we're talking about other ecosystem actors like farmer producer organizations or cooperatives to better understand, can they shift to women friendly value chains and support a woman entrepreneur who wants to equally be a part of that system. So the man and the woman contributing to the household change in consultation with these local actors is really how we see this ecosystem shifting for generations to come. So we know that without the individual kind of actors coming on board to support a woman entrepreneur to take on more of these roles and responsibilities, or becoming a board member or shareholder at these farmer producer organizations or cooperatives, it's really going to be very, very challenging for her to increase agency or even build up her resilience. Last thing I want to touch on is the factor of social capital and enabling groups like village saving lending associations to connect with financial service providers and formal financial credit agencies, and how important data is, and how if we're able to strengthen these farmer producer organizations and cooperatives to do more, to think about women and take on that business case and think about the women-friendly value chain, then it's really a matter of time before we begin collecting that data and having that data in order to negotiate a reduced interest rate with financial service providers. So we really obviously see this as an ecosystem approach, as I know many of us in this room do, and I'm so happy to be able to share those thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you, Lakshmi. I think it's, we were talking just before the session, I think the more you think about it, the more complex you realize it is, really to have an effective intervention. There are so many angles, we've spoken about a few of them here, that you really need to intervene in if you really want to have an impact. And despite all those gaps, we see the impact being done, right? You show the numbers, Abimbola, and I'm thinking here maybe as a closing round here. In your opinion, Abby, what are the kind of interventions that are more effective to close and going back to the financial gap, right? To really making this entrepreneurship story a springboard and not just a waiting room, as you said. In your opinion, what's the effective path?
One story comes to my mind, and I'll paraphrase, about an Olympian for a 100-meter dash that everybody thought you could not do it under 10 seconds. And during the heat, just before the finals, he did it. And at the finals, 3 more people did it. We need to catalyze change by emphasizing what has happened and what has worked with one. If you see more women building million-dollar businesses, you most likely will think to yourself, that means I can. If we see more case studies of people who look like us sitting with key partners in big platforms where they are speaking confidently, you most likely will up your game and move forward. I think that if we showcase more women that are succeeding despite the challenges, more women will stop doing nice businesses, but they will go for the jugular and they will run strong enterprises. What Bayer Foundation does and what other organizations can do, showcase the successes and show the pain so that people will know that that pain is not peculiar to them and how others have succeeded and overcome, then I think we'd have more successes. But that's one way. There are many other ways.
Brilliant, brilliant. Anybody would like to spring in?
Maybe I can add, as Abimbola said, on the professional side, what she highlighted is absolutely what is needed. In her presentation, I found the 1.5% of the funding going to women from Africa, female entrepreneurs from Africa was striking. Making that kind of data available, along with how reliable women are in terms of the return on investment, that is very impactful on the professional side. on the personal side, I always think of, coming from pharmaceutical development, I always think of informed consent. It's something that's very important when patients enroll in clinical trials. Similar to that, when a woman is considering a career, especially when we are not talking about women in urban settings, or if we are talking specifically about rural settings where it's something completely new, the entire family needs to understand the benefits as well as some of the risks if the woman is not well supported. So it's that informed consent process which requires education of the entire family, similar to what Lisa and Lakshmi had highlighted earlier, putting the emphasis on that so that when she has that opportunity, she is well supported, the family is well supported, and it is really being looked at as something that will benefit the family from one generation to another, so that the risk and all of the work is not just on one person or one generation, that they have a longer term view. It's harder to have those conversations without understanding what else is happening. So sharing information on what is happening in other ecosystems is really a great way to do it. So I think the data sharing on the professional side and also the education and the awareness on the personal side is very much needed.
It's a cultural shift. It takes some generations
Yes.
to have it done.
Yeah,
Right?
let's make it cool to have families say that I support the lady of the family, or my daughter-in-law, to go out there, and I'm supporting her and feel proud about it.
Yeah. It can be a gift to the next generation if
Yes.
ours does the work, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Lakshmi?
Yeah, I wanted to bring out a point that that perhaps we touched upon during your presentation, actually, Abimbola, which is this idea that there seems to be this scarcity of technology or access to these provisions, right? This information, there's barriers to accessing the information, even if this information's out there. There are technology gaps and the access to the technology. There seems to be these variables that continue to keep coming up in every ecosystem that we're talking about. And I think one of the things that really drives some of our work is thinking about the technology that could reduce drudgery for a woman as she becomes an entrepreneur. And by drudgery, I mean her own well-being, her own health, but also the activities of her income generating activities, reducing the drudgery of those activities. Is she bending really far down? Are there varieties out there where she doesn't need to do that? Are there implements that she could be renting or procuring? And is her household able to support that? Is her institution able to support that? I only bring that up because I think the well-being of a woman, whether she's an entrepreneur, smallholder farmer, young woman, trying out a new financial service product for the first time, it's that piece of drudgery, I think, that is also driving some of this, and how do we reduce that for the woman? I just wanted to point that out. Thank you.
Interesting perspective. Lisa?
Yeah, I think we need to move beyond talking about women's economic empowerment as something that's nice to have or should have, to something that we need to have for economic growth. I think Abimbola pointed to job creation. We see it right now. Africa in particular, they need jobs. We need economic growth. We need women to be full participants in the economy in order for economies and families and communities to advance. So, I think if you look at the pyramid of all the things that are necessary, we all become overwhelmed by picking off one particular spot. You pick off that slice, we'll pick off that slice, maybe it'll all come together. I think we have to elevate the conversation to women being core drivers of economic growth in these ways with this evidence, and get the full power of governments, of development finance institutions pointing in that direction together. I was really happy in the opening presentation to see the Bayer Foundation's emphasis on climate. There's a lot of concern that climate finance will leave women further behind. Whereas the climate discussion is a discussion about women. Women are most impacted by climate. Women can be part of climate response. So I think being really mindful and making sure that these conversations happen together, and again, that it's not just social responsibility to bring women into economies as full economic participants. It's something that we have to do.
Yeah, I think it's, I mean, for us in this room, and also because we're the majority here, but I think in this room, it's clear, we're 50% of the population able to generate more than 50% of the impact, as the number shows, and I think it's just wonderful that you bring those perspectives. I think we'll have enough time and space to continue those discussions during the Social Innovation Days. I thank you so much for being here, for bringing your knowledge and experience, and we'll continue with the event. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.